This is a sports catastrophe production. Hey there, Heather, ho there, it's Jeff Cutter, and welcome you to another sports catastrophe on this day. And on this day, October the 9th, in 1966, a very shocking upset. So 55 years ago, the Baltimore Orioles and the LA Dodgers were to meet in the World Series. So anyway, the background is that the Dodgers and the Orioles were going to be battling it out. So the onward to the World Series, the Orioles and Dodgers were battling each other out. Remember, in 1966, this was before the wild card game. So basically, you had to win the American League and the National League to get to the World Series. No other playoff teams. So the Orioles were in third place after the 65 season. And in a shocking move, Cincinnati decided to trade Frank Robinson as the manager, as the GM, Mr. DeWitt said. He's an old 30. So they decided to trade Frank Robinson, who was an icon in Cincy, to Baltimore for the one of a starting pitcher by the name of Milt Pappas. Well, that trade did not work out. Cincy got ruined. Pappas wasn't really that good. He did throw a no-hitter for the Cubs in 1972, but still, that was terrible. With Frank Robinson, Baltimore just put up great numbers. In fact, Robinson even won the Triple Crown. He led the American League in home runs, RBI, and batting average. And obviously was the AL MVP. I mean, God, he had a Triple Crown. Baltimore had a 9-game advantage over Minnesota for the AL pennant. Minnesota was the defending AL champ, but not anymore. So the Dodgers were in a tight pennant race, as usual. Dodgers were up by 2 games over the Giants. They had a doubleheader in Philly. They knew that if they won one game, then they were safe. The Giants were in Pittsburgh on the final day. The Giants needed to win. If the Giants won and the Dodgers got swept by the Phillies, then the Giants actually would not have tied the Dodgers for the pennant unless they played their final game. The Giants would have had to play one more game in Cincy to make up a rainout. And if the Giants won that, it would have been a tie. The Dodgers botched 2 plays in the bottom of the 8th, so they lost. Meanwhile, the Giants won in extra innings 7-3. So the Dodgers needed to win the second game of the doubleheader. And of course, Sandy Koufax came on to pitch, obviously. Koufax won the game. Bingo. Dodgers were in the World Series. So game 1 was October the 5th of 66. It was Dave McNally versus Don Drysdale. As Koufax pitched the last game of the regular season, he wasn't eligible for game 1. So the Orioles came out on top. Came out flying. 3 runs. After a walk to Russ Snyder by Drysdale, Frank Robinson and Brooks Robinson, not related, hit back-to-back home runs to make the Orioles a 3-0 lead. The Dodgers could not score in the bottom half of the first. And in the second inning, Russ Snyder got an RBI single and got Eddie Etchebarren, the catcher, home 4-0. Dodgers would score. Jim LeFebvre hit a home run to make it 4-1. In the third inning, Wes Parker had a triple to score a run. Davey Johnson scored on a fielder's choice to make it 4-2. 5-2, pardon. So McNally actually was yanked by Earl Weaver to make way for Mo Drabowski after loading the bases with walks. Well, Drabowski forced in a run to make it, the second run. And then Trubosky struck out 6 straight batters in the 2 innings. So the next 6 batters struck out, which would tie a record set by Hod Eller in 1919. Trubosky would pitch 11 strikeouts in 6 2/3 innings of relief. So it was just 2 pitchers, McNally and Trubosky. Orioles won 5-2. Trubosky won, Drysdale the loss. Game 2 saw Baltimore win 6-0 on the strength of not 1, not 2, but 6 errors in that game. I kid you not, the Dodgers made 6 errors that game. Palmer faced Koufax. It was amazing. Koufax had one of the best seasons of all time. 27 wins, 317 strikeouts, and a 1.73 ERA. Palmer got into trouble with 2 on and 2 out in the second, but managed to induce Koufax to pop up to second base. So after 4 innings, there was no score. But in the 5th, Boog Powell singled, and then Paul Blair hit a routine fly ball to center. Willie Davis lost the ball in the sun, and both runners were safe. Etchebarren would hit a fly ball to center, and Davis bobbled it. Powell scored, and Davis made a terrible throwing error to score Blair, make it 2-0. In fact, Willie Davis had 3 errors in 1 inning, which is a World Series record. So that still stands. Luis Aparicio, the legendary White Sox shortstop now playing for Baltimore, hit a double to score Etchebarren. So all 3 runs were unearned, obviously. Boog Powell would single in Frank Robinson to make it 4-0. And in the 8th inning, Davey Johnson slapped a single off Paranowski's glove, of Ron Paranowski, the Dodgers relief pitcher. Palmer became the youngest pitcher to throw a shutout of the World Series, just 9 days short of his 21st birthday to make it a 2-0 series lead for Baltimore. The Dodgers were not the first team to make 6 errors in 1 game. The Chicago White Sox, in Game 5 of the 1906 World Series and Game 5 of the 1917 World Series, made the 6 errors. And not the tainted Black Sox. So Baltimore was ready to go at home. And they shocked everyone. They were out hit 6-3, but they still won the game. Wally Bunker beat Claude Osteen. Paul Blair got the only run of the game with his 5th inning home run. The Dodgers would have a better defense. However, that didn't work. Baltimore won 1-0. And then on October the 9th, today, Baltimore would take on LA. McNally versus Drysdale. In the 4th inning, Frank Robinson would hit a home run. But the worst part about it for the Dodgers was they didn't score the run. Final score 1-0. Baltimore swept the LA Dodgers, who were heavily favored to win the World Series. To win their 2nd straight World Series, in fact. But Baltimore not only swept the Dodgers, they didn't give up a run for 33 consecutive innings. That is still the record to this day. So LA went 33 innings, or the roughly 3 2/3 games straight without scoring a run in the World Series of all things. In fact, the Orioles became the first American League team not named the Yankees to win the World Series since 1948. That's hard to believe. And the Orioles were the final, and the Orioles became the second to last team to be around in 1901 when things started off that way. The original 16 teams in 1901 to win the World Series, the second last. Philly would be the last, but that would be 14 years later in 1980. So yeah, that's amazing. The Orioles were the St. Louis Browns, remember, back in the day. And they did go to the 44 World Series, but lost to the Cardinals. Anyway, Frank Robinson ended up being the first non-pitcher from a winning World Series team to win the MVP trophy. Bobby Richardson did win it for the Yankees in 1960, but they lost to the Pirates, remember? The Orioles actually did not make any error at all. They were the second team never to make an error in the series, other than the 1937 Yankees. What was strange is that the Dodgers had 6 errors in the 66 World Series, and all of them were in Game 2. The Orioles outscored LA 13-2. or by an average score of 3.25 to 0.5. So Baltimore averaged 3.25 runs a game. The Dodgers 0.5. Terrible. NBC broadcast the series obviously on TV and radio. So starting this year, 1966, and onwards till 1976, only the home team announcer would do TV, splitting with the main guy, splitting play-by-play and color commentary with a neutral NBC announcer. And the visiting team announcer would call the radio broadcast. So basically, Kurt Gowdy would be the guy who would be working the telecast with Vin Scully in Los Angeles and Chuck Thompson in Baltimore. Bob Prince would actually be doing the radio broadcast with Thompson and Scully. This would be the end of an era for the LA Dodgers. In an 8-year span from 59 to 66, they played in 4 World Series, winning 3 of them. This was the only World Series they lost. In addition, they were second twice and fourth once. Sandy Koufax would have to retire following the World Series because of his arthritis and bursitis in his pitching elbow. And remember, Tommy John surgery and all that. The surgeries were archaic back in the 1950s. Maury Wills would be traded to Pittsburgh in December. Tommy Davis would be traded to the Mets after the 66 season, and Jim Gilliam decided to retire. The Dodgers still had their good pitching, but their offense just didn't do too well. However, by 1969, the Dodgers would have their young core help them into contention. And for 20 years, from 69 to 88, the Dodgers won 2 World Series, 5 National League pennants, and 7 Western Division titles. Baltimore would still be the dominant force in the 60s and 70s that they were. They would win 3 straight AL pennants in 69, 70, and 71. Sadly, though, they would suffer greatly. They only won 1 World Series out of those 3. Kind of reminds me of the Oakland A's 88, 89, 90 dynasty. They only won 1 World Series, 89. The Orioles would do decently. But man, there was a lot of mistakes. Terrible scoring. The series losing Dodgers only scored 2 runs, the lowest. And I believe that was the record. It still is the record. And the 15 runs combined with the Dodgers and Orioles were the worst. Has been still the worst too. However, 4 other teams have scored fewer runs than Baltimore in the World Series. The 1915 Bo Sox scored 12 alongside the 63 Dodgers. So that was, I think, for the Dodgers at least, that was 3 runs a game. The 1950 Yankees, 11 runs in 4 games. And the 1918 Bo Sox had 9 runs in 6 games. Wow. Games 3 and 4 were 1-0, which meant it was the first World Series since 1949 to have multiple 1-0 games. Anyway, it was just amazing. And here's the funny stat. The Orioles scored more runs in the first inning of Game 1, 3, than the Dodgers did the whole series, 2. So consider that. Anyway, I'm done talking about this series. It was a very shocking World Series to be had. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.